The Formula One calendar, comprising 24 races over 5 continents, represents a formidable logistics challenge covering sea, air and land. Hi, this is Marcus Hand, editor of Seatrade Maritime News. In this episode, you'll be hearing from Simon Price, Events Logistics Manager for DHL Motorsport. We sat down in the cool-down room at the Singapore F1 paddock a few days before the Grand Prix. Simon, welcome to the podcast, and could you just briefly introduce yourself to our listeners and how you came to be working in F1 logistics with DHL?
Hi, my name's Simon Price. I'm DHL's Motorsport event manager. I've been working in the industry of F1 for the past 25 plus years now. Started out my career working with the within the F1 teams, and I've done multiple series apart from F1, including Formula E recently, transitioning into the logistics part about 2015, I think it was, and actually been with DHL since 2018.
Right, so you've sort of moved over from the team side into the logistics part of the business.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you just give us a sort of overview of what DHL logistics looks like for moving F1, the number of people involved and all that sort of stuff?
Within the F1 side of it, we have three main teams. We have a team in Italy, a team in Germany, and a UK-based team. The UK-based team is the major hub for the F1 side, but all the others do feed in a certain amount of element towards that. But the F1 UK operation is approximately about 100 people, and about 50 of them travel. We don't take 50 to every single race except for in Europe. In an international, it's normally around about 25 to 30 people traveling. It's delivering the air freight and the sea freight to each race.
Just sort of like then move into sort of the air freight and sea freight and so forth. What are the sort of numbers involved? Planes, containers, and
well, we're talking air freight. We're talking 8 aircraft. One of those is the early aircraft, which carries the pre-rig, we call it. We're talking about 800 ton of air freight in total, and that's moving all of the team essential equipment and expensive and technical equipment. But it also moves the international TV equipment, F1's essential equipment, and all their broadcast center equipment as well. The sea freight is in the region of 200 plus sea freight containers, and that will contain all of the non-essential equipment, the cheaper equipment, the bulkier equipment that's easy to produce mass, because the air freight is one set that that just flies around the world. The sea freight will have multiple sets. We'll have approximately 6 sets of each, and they will then transition leapfrog around the world, going to various different destinations. And as we're transitioning into a greener, more logistics pattern now, we're trying to what we call regionalized sea freight, where we, rather than shipping it around the world, we'll ship it to the region. So, for example, in the USA, we'll move the sea freight to Miami for the first race, and then that will stay in region, and we will then cover Canada, Austin, and Las Vegas with that same set without pulling it out of the North America.
If you're enjoying the Seatrade Maritime podcast, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on the app of your choice. Do you have like particular partners you use for sea freight, or?
Yes, we work very close with a fellow stakeholder within F1, MSC, and we have an excellent relationship that's built up over the years since MSC have come into F1. We've fostered the relationship with them, and I would say it's bordering on a symbiotic relationship now. We work really, really well. The beauty about our relationship with them is we're both stakeholders of Formula One, so we both have a vested interest in making sure that the freight is delivered and it's delivered on time. So working with them is a bonus for us.
Okay, so you are sort of like largely in partnership with MSC on that side.
Where we can, where the routings are right, and where they're, and we've found that MSC are very flexible and very supportive. We're all very acutely aware of the geopolitical situations that happen in the world and how they can happen very quickly and transform global freight movements within a couple of weeks. So we have to be able to adapt and move and change for that. And we've worked very closely with MSC, solving some of the problems that we've encountered over the last year or so.
I mean, you must have had. I mean, 2 years ago, around the start of the season, would have had the challenges with the Red Sea and what happened there.
Exactly. So there was a lot of the freight was being diverted around and down around Africa, which was adding 30 to 50 days onto a routing. With our freight, because it is critical freight, basically, that has to be at an event. Is not an option for it not to be at an event. We had to find different solutions. So to get freight across from Bahrain back to Europe, for example, we worked very closely with MSC and created a road bridge where we loaded the sea freight in Bahrain, and we opened a road bridge that took all of the sea freight from the F1 race that was going back to Europe, and we trucked it across Saudi Arabia, took it to Jeddah, and then we ported it onto a MSC ship in Jeddah and took it back to Europe. So there was no delay, rather than having to go all the way down around the coast of Africa. So yeah, the relationship is working very well, and it's all for the benefit of the series.
No, that's a pretty inventive solution. Yeah. Short, in a short period of time.
Yeah. That's that's the mindset of everyone that works in this industry. It can't fail. It must happen.
Yeah, you've got to be there. That being said, what are other particular challenges that relate to logistics for motorsports on a series like this?
It's the timescale that people place on us. I was saying to someone earlier, the F1 is the pinnacle of motorsport, and they like to push the boundaries on every asset of the vehicle operation, from the fuel to the tires to the mechanics and the drivers. And they're all and the engineers are all trying to gain those extra tenths, and they're pushing the boundaries of motorsport all the time. But what the teams are then doing is they're pushing that across to us, and they're pushing the boundaries of the capabilities of logistics. So we're always being challenged. At some point, we're pushing the envelope of how far you can go and where you can go. We move freight from Las Vegas to Qatar. We're racing one weekend, and we're racing the weekend after. We're moving from one continent to another continent on a 18-hour flight with an 11-hour time difference that's not beneficial to us. So we've already lost just over a day before we've even got into country. And then we have to deliver that freight. That freight has to be set up, has to be up and running. You've got all the things that are beyond your control. If a plane goes technical, if there's a delay, if there's a weather situation, all of these things, but we must deliver. We cannot not deliver. The next week is not an option because the race is that weekend.
Yeah.
So we have to be very creative in our solutions sometimes. And as I say, we've not had a failure yet.
I mean, could you give an example of something where you got really it's like really close and it's, difficult situation you've had to get out of?
A few years ago when we were going this was sea freight, when we were going, it was just coming out of the pandemic. So the sea freight was a little bit, I would say, out of kilter, and it was overworked as well. And we were going to the Australian Grand Prix, and there was a problem with one of the engines of the vessel, which meant it slowed down. That then consequently meant it was held at port, outside the port, because it missed its slot. When it got in, it missed the transfer onto another vessel. That was here in Singapore, funnily enough. The next vessel would have made it into Melbourne. I think it was the week after the race, which definitely wasn't an option. So we pulled the sea freight off the ship, worked with MSC on this one to change the destination, pulled the sea freight off, put it into a local DHL depot, de-stuffed the containers, built those into air freight, DHL then made available to us as a motorsport department 3 aircraft, which we flew into Singapore. We loaded, flew them down to Melbourne. Well, 2 went to Melbourne, 1 went to Sydney, and then we moved everything across from there and delivered into the circuit. And we delivered in time.
So a really high-speed switch there from sea freight to air freight.
It was yes, it was an exciting time.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
We're sort of sitting here in Singapore. You had Baku 2 weeks ago. Could you just sort of describe the logistics that go into, like, from going to Baku to here and how it all comes together?
Yeah, I mean, we have a team that comes ahead. On the track side, we have 2 teams, or 3 teams, should I say. We have the sea freight guys and the sea freight crew. They can't physically do every single race because for them to deliver the sea freight is a lot longer than the air freight. So takes them 3 weeks. So they were already here when we were doing the race in Azerbaijan. They were delivering the sea freight in. And then, so that was already in operation whilst we were in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, we packed down the air freight and loaded up all the 8 aircraft and sent them across to here. And then the office team and the air freight team moved across with that freight so that they arrived in country, and we then delivered the air freight at the weekend. The sea freight operation would run from the Monday of the week before the race, and it will end on the Wednesday of race week. Right. And that's delivering all of the sea freight and in all its component parts. So we deliver to multiple areas within F1 for the sea freight. That will go into the teams, go into the international TV compound. It will go to F1. It will go to the hospitality, to the paddock club, and also out into the fan zone areas. We deliver freight out into the fan zone areas for the merchandise and some of the fan activities like pit stop challenge and simulators and everything like that.
So all sort of aspects that go along with the race.
Basically, if it's not the circuit, we deliver it. So,
so not the tarmac.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just looking at the sea freight side, so where would that have come from before it came to Singapore?
The sea freight in Singapore, most of it has come across from Australia and the Australian Grand Prix. We would have loaded that after the race in Australia, probably held some of it in country for a period of time, and then put it on a ship to come here as soon as the F1 bond was open in Singapore, and delivered it in, and it would have been held by the local agent here. There, we would have given them an instruction of what containers we want and when, and then they would have delivered those containers into the areas we want, and my team would have unloaded them.
Okay. Obviously, this is part of the flyaway races in the season. How does that differ with when you're in Europe? How do the logistics differ for that part? And which would you say is easier as well?
With the internationals, which we call them, which are flyaways, for us, they're probably easier because we manage the logistics as a whole. With F1, we manage all of the logistics, so we have control of it, and we have a better control of how and with the movements of the freight. Even though we're controlling more freight, because we have control of it, it's easier and we can deliver it better. Within Europe, a lot of the freight we don't have any jurisdiction over because it's done by the teams themselves. So they have their own trucks and their own vehicles and their own section. And also in Europe, there's a lot more, strangely enough, of the freight, because they're taking their own hospitality units, their own buildings, and they're taking a lot more crew to set those up and build those. Within Europe, I think there's approximately about 350 to 400 trucks that go to every single race for F1. Out of those 350 to 400, 120 of them are operated by DHL. And those, all the vehicles that are DHL-owned vehicles are operated on HVO, sustainable fuel.
Yeah.
Which is I think HVO is the generation 2. It has no impact onto the food chain. It's recycled oil. So that's me getting my green bit in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually, that is important. And I mean, you have targets for that, don't you? I believe.
We do. We've signed a joint agreement with F1 to be carbon neutral by 2030. DHL as a whole a commitment, which is an amazing commitment to be carbon neutral by 2050 for a global logistics company like we are. That's a really, really ambitious goal. And I think, I don't know all the facts on it, but I think DHL are ahead of schedule for that themselves. And we're ahead of schedule for that within F1. We're looking at trying to push, and DHL are driving the route towards sustainability with F1 by we deliver all the generators that run on sustainable fuel that supply the power for the paddock in Formula One. We use SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, on all our flights that we supply to F1. We use sustainable Seatrade fuel diesel in any routing that we do with the Seatrade, and obviously HVO in the trucking. So, and the next level on that is we're looking at people logistics, because every person that you take has a carbon footprint. And if we can reduce that by using the global network of DHL in country and region. So we're looking at training up and showing the local people, the local DHL offices, the operation that we do, so that we can reduce the amount of people we send, which reduces our carbon footprint again. We just then to send a skeleton crew eventually that will guide these people and supervise. That's a long-term project, right. Very long-term project, but it is something we have to drive towards, and we have to look at in order to move this project forward. Just doing the same way you used to do it is not going to move it forward and not going to improve anything for anybody.
So you're basically going to sort of leverage on the global network that DHL has in terms of its people as well as its assets.
Yeah, why not? It's a huge company that has its footprint in every continent in the world, I think, and I think it's the only truly global logistics company in the world. But it's got good people everywhere. I mean, we have excellent people in my team here that deliver an excellent service and an excellent job under really difficult circumstances sometimes. But if we can use the good people in other parts of DHL, then we should do.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And just for yourself, you come from a motorsports background. How does that help in terms of like understanding the logistics side and the challenges?
It helps immensely. I think if you come into doing this niche logistics from a logistics background, you're very good at moving logistics, but you don't understand the customers. And the customer needs here are extreme, and the demands are extreme, and they're very demanding customers, rightly so, because it's a very demanding industry. Everyone's under a lot of pressure. So having come from that background, I understand when the teams want something, how they want something. And sometimes we can then utilize knowledge that I have to predict where there's going to be an influx of freight, where there's going to be a need for something to happen and extraordinary to happen. And we can perform that. So it gives us an advantage. We're slightly ahead of the game.
Yeah, I can see how that works. So just to wrap this up, the next race is in 2 weeks' time in the US. How will the pack up go from here to Austin, Texas?
The sea freight from here will pack down, and that'll happen all over next week, the week post of the Grand Prix. And that once that's all packed down, that will go across and move up to Abu Dhabi.
Yep.
The air freight will all be packed down on Sunday night, Monday morning. We'll probably wrap it up over the Monday period, because we have not only F1 here, we have the freight for the F1 Academy here that we're doing as well, and we're moving that. So my team will be packing that down. We'll put that on an aircraft, and then that's going to Bahrain for a test. So the freight then from here will fly to Austin. Will already have a crew in Austin doing the sea freight delivery in, and then the office team and the air freight crew will go with the freight from here across to Austin, and we'll have a nice leisurely inbound operation there. It's always a good one in Austin, because we are also the local agent there as well. So the ground handling agents, so DHL USA are the ground handling agent. So we know them well.
Excellent. Good luck with that. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our listeners, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Seatrade Maritime podcast, and we look forward to joining you on our next episode.